Some fragrances are just so timeless that no matter how long ago they came out, they always seem to work in any situation, any time of year. In this video, I've gathered 10 of my absolute favorite all-time classic men's fragrances that I just love. I'm glad to have in my collection. Though I don't wear all the time, I do like to revisit them from time to time because they always work. So stay tuned. Starting with one that's most synonymous with a lot of members of my family, honestly, that being DAVIDOFF Cool Water, the original. Known to be kind of Davidoff's take on Green Irish Tweed from Creed, this has a much more beach aquatic vibe. Has this lovely aquatic seawater type of smell with this fresh green mintiness. It's very easygoing. Even to this day, with as many reformulations as this fragrance has been through, it still performs really well. I always get beyond 6 hours of longevity on my skin. It's distinctive. Everybody knows it. People that aren't even into fragrances, they know Cool Water when they smell Cool Water because it's one of the highest selling men's fragrances of all time and is still very popular and sought after to this day. With so many bottles in production and out there, it's easy to run across these at different rack stores and discounters, and you're not going to spend more than 20 bucks to get yourself a nice 125 milliliter bottle, a big bottle like this, and it will go a long ways and is never a bad time to smell like this. It's a timeless, masculine, fresh fragrance. It just works in every situation. Casual, dressed up, summer, winter, doesn't matter. Never a bad time for Cool Water. It's definitely one of the all-time greats in men's fragrances. Now, this is an all-time classic, the highest selling men's fragrance of all time to this date, and is still extremely popular. This is 90s in a bottle. This is quintessential 90s with Acqua di Gio from Giorgio Armani. While you're bound to know at least one person at some point that still wears this fragrance. If not, it's somebody you've come across in your life that has worn this. Most likely several people that you've come across that have worn this. It's super fresh, green, a little floral. There's a lot of different things going on. This is a beach vibes, easy to like type of fragrance. My wife still loves when I spray this one on. I actually wore it at the recording of this. I wore this out the shower a few nights ago, and when I walked in the room, she said, "Ooh, you smell really nice." That seems to happen every single time I spray this one. I go back to it for nostalgia's sake from time to time, and like I said, even most recently as a few days ago, I wore this one because some will call it dated, some will have bad memories of an ex-boyfriend or an ex-husband or something like that, or it smells like their uncle. So I understand all of those different things, but for what it is, it set the tone for a lot of what today's fragrances are all about, and it is to be respected. It is an all-time great. It is a modern classic, even though it did come out closer to 30 years ago than 20 years ago. It's still a great fragrance. There's a bunch of flankers that have spawned in this line that are better than it, but it's still one of the greatest fragrances of all time for men. That being Acqua di Gio, Giorgio Armani. While this is not rich and dense like its original formulation, this is still a nice, gentlemanly, soapy, aromatic tobacco fragrance that's very enjoyable even for myself. From time to time, I do wear it on occasion, but always with an Oxford like I'm wearing right now, that being Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme. Like I said, not one that I revisit that often, but it is to be respected in men's fragrances. It just has that gentlemanly vibe. This is a daily driver, quintessential masculine work fragrance. If you work in a climate controlled environment or you wear a suit to work every day, this is that daily driver type of fragrance where it's not too serious, but it's not a lackadaisical laid back type of fragrance either. A lot of lavender here gives that aromatic barbershop type of feel with this smooth, dry kind of herbaceous tobacco note. There's a little bit of spices. There's a little touch of sweetness here. It's an old school vibe with a modern touch since reformulation. It's not what it once was, but it's still worth revisiting from time to time. It's enjoyable. It's an all-time classic. The original, I believe, came out sometime around 1994, if I remember correctly. That was back when it used to have a sticker label. that said Dolce & Gabbana, whereas now it has this print on the bottle. It's not the exact same fragrance that it used to be. It's a shell of itself, but you can find them very cheap these days, and it's worth revisiting from time to time because it's not a heavily copied barbershop style fragrance, because not that many aromatic lavender barbershop fragrances feature tobacco notes, which this one does. An all-time classic in my book, Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme. Now, I don't know how many people feel this way about this fragrance like I do, because it ties to my childhood. It is quintessential 90s to me. I'm a 90s kid, that being the original Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger. I love this stuff. I mean, I'm almost out of this 30 ml. I do have another 30 ml. I have a 50 ml. I have multiple bottles. I've had many bottles over the years. Ah, it's so good. It's got this bright juiciness, this crisp, green, fresh, spicy aspect to it. It's got a lot of character for as simple of a fragrance as it is. The note breakdown doesn't lend it to be too simple, but it's pretty straightforward. You're going to get some citrus, you're going to get some freshness, you're going to get a bit of spice, and it's going to be a little refined, not too serious, but it's definitely not a laid-back fragrance, though it can be worn with a t-shirt. I do lean this one to be kind of polo and above. It always has struck me that way because the Tommy Hilfiger brand was always about that in the 90s. They were known for their polo style shirts, even the vintage style logo before they went to the flag style logo. I mean, this is just like with Acqua di Gio, this is 90s in a bottle for me. This, I mean, 1995-ish, I want to say, is when this came out. It ties closely to my childhood, reminds me of those days. The music, the culture, everything about the early to mid 90s, this bottle screams it to me. For me personally, it's an all-time classic. I don't know how some of you feel. I'd love to hear what you think about Tommy in the comments below, so definitely let me know down below. But for me, absolutely an all-time great. It's Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger. Been around since the 70s, been through many formulations. This is an old school tobacco fragrance at its finest. It's piney green, it's bright, it's built for the cold. It is the original Polo by Ralph Lauren. Not the powerhouse it used to be, but still no slouch. I guess most people these days would say it's kind of a watered down version. And I have to agree with that, but there's still a bit of a smoky tobacco nuance to it. It still gives me that like 7-ish hours of oomph on my skin that the original used to give me. I say original, it was already reformulated a few times, even back when I used to wear it in my early teens, back in the late 90s. It's a lovely fragrance that is worth revisiting. I know this one gets the tag of the old man smell because it's been around since the 70s. This was a fragrance that was known to have had that money smell, the masculine, mature vibe, if you will, the green and the gold, money. It screamed money. That's what it was always heralded as, and for good reason. It's still a signature scent for a lot of a bit older men these days. I understand that, but this is one of those respect your elders type of fragrances, in my opinion, that I do love, that I have back in my collection, because it's a very nostalgic fragrance for me, because there was a time in my life when I wore this one to school dances many, many moons ago, obviously, and like I said, it still performs pretty well for me. Not the beast that it once was many, many years ago, but 7-8 hours of longevity is still a lot of life for a fragrance, in my opinion. There are much more modern takes on this style of fragrance these days. There's even a reimagined version that released this past year called Polo Cologne Intense EDP, which is kind of the modern take on the reimagining of this original, minus the tobacco with some more modern synthetics, your ambroxan, a little bit of violet leaf, a brighter green fragrance than a warmer green fragrance with tobacco that this is. This is more about earthy tones, whereas that's more about bright freshness. Kind of the other side of the coin, if you will. But one that's to be respected, in my opinion, and has a great place in men's perfumery history. It's a great fragrance, an all-time classic for sure, is the original Polo from Ralph Lauren. So one that growing up I had never experienced, at least I don't recall experiencing, and this isn't the exact formula that came out back in 1966 by any means. This is a re-release, reinterpretation of the original, the classic Christian Dior fragrance, Eau Sauvage. This is the Eau de Toilette. As you can see, I've had this bottle for a while, not a real big dent in it. I kind of have it just to revisit from time to time. It's not one that I wear all the time, but it is a lovely citrus aromatic with some fougere attributes to it. There's some greenery, there's some spice, there's a little bit of a coumarin tone to it, there's some woods, of course. Has a lot of character, not some beast in performance. It's like a 4 or 5 hour fragrance in longevity, but it does have a timeless scent DNA. It still works even today, because at the end of the day, it's a citrus aromatic. Citrus aromatics are just easy to like, easy to wear. This is kind of the original mass appealing style of fragrance, if you will. This is what was the old school fresh fragrance that everybody could just spray on for any time and smell great. Back in those days, for many decades, this was that fragrance. This was the heart of Christian Dior's men's fragrance line for a long time, which now the heart is the Sauvage line, not Eau Sauvage. Funny how things circle back from Eau Sauvage in the past to Sauvage currently. But totally different scent profiles. This is much more of a dated style, but like I said, it's not too dated as compared to maybe some of the other ones that we've mentioned in this video so far, because it's just a blast of lemon, citruses, and some greens, which is still widely used in men's fragrances today, but definitely respectable and easy to like even today. I'd love to smell a vintage version, but God knows how spoiled those citruses are. With Christian Dior Eau Sauvage. While a nostalgic scent for me for different reasons, not for me wearing it personally, but because this was, for a long time, this was my father's signature scent. I actually don't even enjoy the fragrance that much, to be completely honest with you. It's one of the few lavender heavy fragrances that I'm not a real big fan of, that being Calvin Klein's Eternity. I personally love the Eau de Parfum version is the one that I enjoy, but I do have a bottle just for nostalgia's sake. It makes me think of my father. May he rest in peace, but it's a timeless classic. Not bad, just never really was my cup of tea. There's a lot of men that still wear this one today. You can get it super cheap. This comes in a white tester box. I paid $20 for this 100 milliliter bottle from a discounter on eBay. I don't even remember the discounter specifically, but nothing special in performance here, but it is a timeless classic masculine aromatic type of fragrance. This one features more greens and herbaceous components than bright citrus. I don't find it to have a whole lot of brightness to it, though there is a little bit of a radiance up top. It's more about this soapy lavender. It's a very soapy fragrance, I find, in the opening, even going into the heart, and there's a lot of greens that give it some character and give it some edge, though to me this is one I would consider kind of a dated smell. Personally, it's respectable, and like I said, for me personally, it's very nostalgic because it was my father's signature scent. When I smell it, when I see the bottle, I think of him. So that's why I hold this one in high regard, and I know there is a lot of men out there that may happen to see this video that will agree. This is definitely an all-time great when it comes to designer men's fragrances, and it's one to be respected. It spawned countless flankers at this stage. It's probably the most popular men's Calvin Klein fragrance, outside of maybe Obsession or something like that, which my dad did wear a lot of, had a few bottles of that over the years as well. That was kind of his evening scent. This was the daily wear, if you will. But an all-time great that is to be respected, just like everything else in this video. Nostalgic purposes only, for me, of course, is Calvin Klein Eternity. Now this is one that you can get really cheap, that's really powerful, and if you're into barbershop fragrances, it's a pretty damn good one even today, in my opinion. That being QUORUM. That's right. It's not one I wear that often, but I'll tell you what, it's damn enjoyable. Super aromatic and spicy. This is that spicy aftershave type of smell that I really, really dig in some barbershop fragrances. This is similar to another fragrance we'll be speaking of in just a little bit. I won't name just yet because it's actually the next fragrance we're going to be talking about. Have a similar vibe, they do a similar job, but this one just, there's a little bit different character to it. This one kind of works better in the cold. This is one I rather wear with a polo or even a t-shirt when it comes to this scent profile. Though it does dress up pretty well, there's other options of this barbershop spicy aromatic scent profile that I would prefer to wear with a collared shirt or an Oxford or a suit and tie or something along those lines. Not saying this doesn't handle that perfectly, but it definitely cuts through the cold very well because it's such a warm and spicy fragrance. And you can find these 100 milliliter bottles for like $13 to $17 from most discounters. Nordstrom Rack was actually where I found this one for, I want to say $16, $15, something like that. An all-time classic that spawned its own respectable small amount of flankers that, of course, I personally have not tried, but I would like to get my nose on one day. Definitely let me know what you think of Quorum down in the comments. It's one of my personal favorites. That's why it made its way into the video. Definitely respectable from Puig. This is Quorum. So this is the fragrance I was referring to that does a similar job to Quorum, that being AZZARO Pour Homme, the original. Yes, I actually enjoy this one a little bit more. I've had this bottle for some time. For some reason, I don't wear it that often, especially since I now have the Pour Homme Intense flanker, which I deem the ultimate version of this. Much more modern take, boozy, much more spicy. But this is an ode to classic barbershop fragrances. This is another one that gets the old man tag, dated. Some people don't care for it. I understand all that. I've always enjoyed this. I used to have a 100 milliliter bottle many years ago. This is my 60 ml bottle I've had for a few years now that I just seldomly wear. I kind of have for nostalgic purposes, just to revisit on occasion, a spray once in a blue moon, if you will. This is another one that's a heavy, aromatic aftershave, spicy type of smell. A lot of spices here, but more of a soft spice than a warm spice. Fresh and soft, if you will. It's not real harsh and too in your face, but it can be a loud fragrance in the first hour and a half or 2 hours, especially if you spray this one kind of heavy. It can be a little too much and a bit cloying, but it's been around for a long time, and this is one that has spawned a ton of separate AZZARO Pour Homme lines within a line, and flankers, and fresh flankers, and cologne intenses, and different renditions of Pour Homme Intense. There's been 2 renditions of that. There's been the sensual, I forgot what you call them, the different colored bottles with amber fever and wild mint and all that. There's been countless AZZARO Pour Homme flankers, but this is not a vintage version. Obviously, this bottle is several years old, but not 20 years old, if you will. So not what it was originally, but for what it is, it's one that I do like to revisit, because this is one of those fragrances that kind of put me along the path to where I am today when it comes to my love for fragrance. Definitely an all-time classic, the original AZZARO Pour Homme. Last but not least, this may be a surprising pick for some of you, because you can find this easily for just a few dollars at so many department stores and so many discount rack stores across the country, that being the original Curve. This makes me think of late elementary and middle school. This one narrowly edged out AZZARO Chrome. I didn't want to have too many fresh 90s fragrances in here, even though 90s was really my jam. That was my era. This is something that even today, you can just grab a bottle of Curve and it'll work. It's got some fruity freshness. It's got a strong woody presence. It's got a little bit of character. Sure, it doesn't last for anything. It's a couple of hours at best. Then it's gone, but you can respray. You get 75 ml like this, you're going to spend 10 or 12 bucks. A 4.2 ounce, you'll spend under $20 to get a big bottle. Usually around $15, $16, $17. You can get a bigger bottle than this. This is a 75 ml, a 2.5 ounce. You can get a 4.2, 125 milliliters. For under 20 bucks, and there's never a bad time to smell like Curve. Curve has spawned countless flankers as well. I've used the term flanker many times in this video. For those of you that don't know, that's a fragrance that works for the same namesake and takes a fragrance's DNA and twists it and goes a bit of a different direction. A true flanker, anyways, will take a fragrance DNA and change a few things about the balance of notes, maybe remove a few notes, add a few notes, and take it in a different direction. That's like they have Curve Wave, Curve Crush, Curve Black, Curve Gold, Curve Connect, and so on. They have a ton of different ones. They have ones that smell like straight shower gel. They have ones geared for the evening that are much more spicy, and so on. While I would always take the original over any of the flankers, there's a lot of options out there. This is a great spot to start a collection. If you're on a heavy budget, this is one of the best ways to spend less than 20 bucks on a cologne out there for men, in my opinion. If you're just starting, or you're getting a first fragrance for your son or something like that, this is a perfect spot to start him with, in my opinion. An all-time classic. It's the original Curve. While not every all-time classic men's fragrance out there, this was my 10 personal favorites. And until next time, do me a real quick favor. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, because I do appreciate all the feedback, and I love hearing from you guys. What are some of your favorites that didn't make my particular list of 10? I'm very curious to hear you guys sound off in the comments below, because there's a lot of great ones out there. I just narrowed it down to the 10 that are most important to me. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of you that are going to say, oh, I can't believe you left this off. I can't believe you left that off. That's why we're having this conversation at the end. By all means, let me know what some of your favorites are that I did not include. And until next time, I will say, if you get your hands on any of these 10 all-time greats and you give them a spray now, you might end up thanking me later. Have a good one, guys.